Do you know if you die without a will, any family member can make a claim against your estate? Today on the show, we're discussing what happens if you die without a will in place.
Welcome to the Wealth Nation podcast, a podcast for every mother, daughter, grandmother, sister, and wife, and the men who are smart enough to tune in. The Wealth Nation podcast brings you all you need to know about investments, business, property investments, personal finance, and all-around financial wellness. Here is your host, Yolanda Rose.
Hi, this is Yolanda, and welcome to the Wealth Nation podcast. I aim to provide you with content, tips, and strategies that you can use to improve your money management and to build generational wealth. If you are a frequent listener of the show, I would love to hear from you. So drop me a line on Instagram. It's Financially Fabulous Females. I'm also on Facebook as well. So give us a shout out, inbox us. We would love to hear from you and what your thoughts are about the podcast. And if you are new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. So on whichever platform that you are listening on, go ahead, subscribe. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. Now, iTunes, if you have an iPhone, it's a great platform to listen to. But if you don't have an iPhone, consider downloading the Stitcher app or Tuned In app or the Spotify app. And Spotify is very popular, and you can subscribe to the show and always get updates on when a new episode is released. Last week on the show, we spoke to Durban ganjapreneur Lynette Ganessen about the whole marijuana scene in South Africa and how you can enjoy the benefits of medical marijuana. So if you want to know more about the legalization of marijuana in South Africa and how you can get your hands on legal marijuana products, go to our website. It's www.financiallyfabulousfemales.com and check out the episode with Lynette Ganessen. The Wealth Nation podcast is sponsored by Audible. Audible is a seller and producer of spoken audio entertainment, information, and educational programming on the internet. Audible sells digital audiobooks, radio and TV programs, and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. For a 30-day free trial of Audible, go to www.financiallyfabulousfemales.com/audible. Less than 80% of South Africans have a will in place. And a lot of the time we think that wills are for the rich people or for people with a lot of money. But every South African needs a will. And today on the show, we're going to discuss why you need to have a will in place and what will happen to your assets and your family if you had to die without a will in place. When you die without a will in place, it's called an intestate succession, and the courts determine where your assets go. If you have no plan in place for your minor children and they are left parentless, their inheritance will be placed in the government Guardians Fund. The Guardians Fund is administered by the Master of the High Court. It's also important to name several key roles, including an executor of your will, the power of attorney for both your health care and your financial affairs if you become incapacitated while you're still living. So you want to have somebody that you trust make a decision. For example, if you were in a vegetative state, would you want the plug pulled or would you want to continue living in that state? So you need to appoint somebody in your will that will take care of those decisions for you. You know, here's one celebrity trend that you should avoid completely, and that is having a will. And a lot of celebrities we find that are dying without a will, and most recently, Aretha Franklin died last August in her Detroit home after a long battle with cancer, and she did not have a will in place. She was 67 when she died. So her 4 sons filed a document with the Michigan courts that list themselves as interested parties in Franklin's estate. A niece also asked the court to appoint her as a personal representative for the estate. So basically, anybody, any 45th cousin can make a claim on your estate if you die without a will in place.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Tuned In. Now back to the show.
So while you might assume estate planning only applies to wealthy people, this is not the case. And I want you to go and listen a couple of episodes back where we spoke to Capital Legacy on the death taxes that we have to pay. And we spoke about why that a will and estate planning is not just for wealthy people. It's for average people just like us. So your estate basically refers to your own financial accounts, your real estate, and your possessions. So putting a plan in place for those assets helps to ensure that upon your death, your wishes are carried out and that family squabbles don't evolve into destroying relationships. So in other words, It's partly about making things easier for your loved ones during an already difficult time. When a person passes on without a will, they forfeit the privilege of deciding what should happen to their estate, and their estates gets allocated in terms of a predetermined legislated guidelines known as intestate succession. So in other words, that person has no say in how the estate should be distributed. Having a will in place should form part of a broader legacy and financial planning with a specific focus on estate planning. This is a subject that most people avoid because it involves death, and nobody really likes to think or even plan for death. But not having a will can have a very traumatic effect on the family, and in some instances it can be very expensive as well. A large number of South Africans pass on without a will in place. This means they have no say in their estate. When a person dies without a will in place, prescribed rules take over and operate through a legal set of guidelines on the deceased's behalf as to how the estate will be divided. And, it can get complicated, especially in the terms of if you have common law partners, multiple common law partners, multiple common law wives, it can get sticky. The rules of intestate succession come into effect in cases where a will is not left to guide the distribution of the estate. So, for example, if a deceased is married in community of property, the deceased spouse will receive half of the joint estate plus 250,000 Rand or a child's portion, whichever is greater. A child's portion is calculated by dividing the remainder of the estate by the number of children and the number of spouses. So in the event that there is no surviving spouse, the estate is divided between the children of the deceased. If one of the deceased children preceded him or her, then the children of the predeceased child, that's the grandchild in that case, will inherit the child's portions. And if there's multiple grandchildren from that child, they will get, their portion will be divided even further. So in event that the deceased passes away in the absence of a spouse or children, the estate is divided equally between the parents of the deceased. In all scenarios, the Master of the High Court will nominate a person to administer the estate, be an executor, which is an extremely important function, and one can only handpick their own executor in their will. In addition, and in the absence of clear directives that can only be made in a will, all inheritances for minors, that's persons below 18, will be placed in the Government Guardians Fund. The Government Guardians Fund is administered by the Master of the High Court. So if you die and if you have underage children, your assets will be administered by the court, and whoever's looking after your children will have to go to the courts to ask for money. It's a scary thing as a parent to know that you've got a sizable estate and your kids have to be begging for your own money. It's not a nice feeling at all. Funds may only be accessed by minor children for specific limited purposes, and the master has implemented stringent requirements and processes in this regard to prevent abuse and fraud. Estate planning is more than just drafting a will. It's about protecting your assets, of financially supporting the people left behind, and making sure that your tax on your estate paid is of a reasonable amount. So if you want to get your hands on your free will, go to www.financiallyfabulousfemales.com/free will. And I'm going to have the guys at Capital Legacy, the largest fiduciary company in South Africa, to come out to you at your convenience, at your location, and draft your will for you for free. So we'll talk to you next time on the Wealth Nation podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to visit our website at www.financiallyfabulousfemales.com and sign up for our free investment masterclass.